if I'm young and I want to invest in myself, go find some resources online about entrepreneurship. Figure out what you like doing and maybe give it a shot. Like use some money to go buy something and resell it, right? Make a product, find an audience, like just give it a shot. Because if you fail, you'll figure out what business is like. If you succeed, you might just find your career.
Stack my money up like Legos. Bet me when I say so. Pull up in the spotlight. Pull up in the drive.
What's up, world? It's your boy Ross Mack, man, and this is Money Music Culture. And you already know I'm sitting here with my co-host, my dog, my brother, B. Cope. I love you, brother, but enough with you, man, because we got an amazing special guest, man, Mr. Sherwin Gandhi. I'm talking about former Wall Street, and then he started his own tech company, recently built it, and just exited at a $2 billion valuation. Let me say that again. That's 2B. That's a B, a B, a B. What's better than 1 billion? 2 billion. You know what the Jay-Z lyrics say, but guess what, man? Without further ado, man, we about to get in here and kick it off with my dog, Sherwin, man. Hopefully, you can see if he can get your boy a loan.
What's up, world? It's your boy, Brandon Copeland, a.k.a. Professor Cope, and I'm here with my dog, as always, my right-hand man. 200 grand. No, you know what? You've been adding a lot more value. 500 grand over here, man. Ross Mack. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing phenomenal. You already know we are on the West Coast. Weather's good. I got my shirt, you know what I mean?
Pastels.
Sometimes I gotta, unbutton it, let the chest hair get a little breather.
Ooh.
It's up. But don't worry about me, man. We sitting here with a very special guest, man.
Yes, you're right. Wifey, she might whip your ass for having that last button down. You better button that back up. But no, man, more importantly, we got Sherwin Gandhi here. I truly, truly appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us, have this conversation. Welcome to Money Music Culture. Can you introduce yourself to our audience? What makes you tick? What makes Sherwin?
Guys, thanks for having me here. It's an honor. This is gonna be a lot of fun.
Yes.
And yeah, we're in Cali. We're in Newport Beach. I got a little
Pastels.
I'm waiting for the sunset.
Yes.
It's gonna be a good evening.
Yeah.
Look. First of all, the event today was great. We, we met talking about credit markets. So I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Grew up a big Steelers fan.
Awkward.
Nice.
Patriots weren't necessarily, my favorite, but performance. I mean, it's incredible, right?
Amen.
Yeah, I think there's much respect to the team over the years.
I grew up a Ravens fan, even though obviously I played with them, Patriots, and all that stuff, but like them Steeler-Ravens battles,
Oh, wow.
like there was real tension
There was
out there on those fields, But
a ton. I went to a Steelers game once when the Browns were visiting. I was pretty young. I'd heard stories about it getting a little rowdy. I just remember the guy in front of us was wearing, he's wearing like a dog mask. People were just throwing peanuts, pouring a little beer on the poor guy. He's like the only Browns fan in the
I'm
stadium.
just trying to watch the game.
Okay, you got to watch this from home.
Yeah.
I feel like Steelers fans get rowdy. Couple fights.
Eagles fans,
Yeah.
And
Pretty
Raiders. Well, probably back when they were in Oakland. Now they're in Vegas, so it's probably
be a little
not
different.
as...
Yeah, there's certain stadiums that, and obviously we're gonna get back into the intro, but there's certain stadiums that I would not let wifey go to on an away game, just because it was like, it's just not. On the field, I'm gonna be wondering, is somebody disrespecting my wife for wearing a different color jersey?
But she would be sitting in there like the wife section, the family
away
section.
games, we don't get that. Home games, we
really?
get the friends and family section, right? We
Okay,
have
I
our
know
own
that.
section. Away games, typically, you got to pay for your own tickets at away games, and usually you just up in the nosebleeds or wherever.
Gotcha.
So I've had friends who came to games. I remember in Detroit, I had a buddy who came out to us play our first playoff game in Seattle, and he said he goes to every Detroit Lions game. He said, I literally don't even feel comfortable going out after this. I usually go out after every game. He was in the bathroom at the game, and a couple people tried to jump him.
Wow.
And I'm like,
Wow.
obviously, it might be a little different for the female side, right?
Yeah.
But still, certain
I want
things.
to take
like,
a quick break and just talk to the camera. Copeland just said that he had a buddy that went to his first playoff game. That's his first and only playoff game. I don't think Copeland has ever. In fact, I'm still largely confused that you ever
That's
even
crazy.
had a playoff game, but back to regular schedule programming. No way did you have a second playoff game.
You're right about that. You're right about that. But this is the year. This is the year. Trust the process is what the bummy franchises say. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, sir, we obviously already off topic. We talking football. Well, it's never off topic here, but kind of. Again, let's get back to your story.
It's hard not to talk football coming from Pittsburgh.
It is.
Yeah, but grew up in Pittsburgh. My folks moved to that area of the country back in the '60s, and we just grew up like with the Pirates and the Penguins and all that. So I was grew up in Pittsburgh. I was really interested in what the rest of the country looked like. So after graduating from high school, went to college in upstate New York, in Albany, then moved to Manhattan with my first job, and was there for about 15 years. Worked at a startup, worked at a few investment banks, at a hedge fund, and then during the pandemic, I got married, had 2 kids during that time. And then we moved to Austin during the pandemic, and founded a company, while I was in New York. That's raised a few rounds of capital. It's a global fintech, and we provide credit, payments, and other financial services to other startups all around the world. So it was really cool because my dad's an engineer. I studied computer science and finance, worked in the credit markets, and then this company is kind of like, it all kind of came together along with entrepreneurship. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's happening.
Wow. We're going to keep this great conversation going, but before we do, make sure you go follow Money Music Culture so that you never miss an episode. And go visit us at life101.io.
So yeah, we got, for one, you just put your amazing career in like 1 minute. So we're gonna dissect that because you have a crazy dope career. And I wanna just go in because, right, a lot of off-camera magic we've been having, a lot of conversations, but like you started out in finance, right? We both got credit backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Morgan Stanley, high yield desk, did a lot of left fin. You were in the structured products, right? But talk about your timing. You were there from 07, 08, 09, like you were there in the credit crisis. Like, how was that?
It was, so I didn't know what was going on. I just graduated from college, and I'm like, great, let me learn, what is it like to work at a bank? Little did I know, and this was 2004. So I graduated from school in 2004, started at JP Morgan in credit risk management, which what I didn't know back then is kind of instrumental to capital markets and just the way the world works, right? We're seeing the Federal Reserve right now set monetary policy, ECB setting monetary policy. That stuff drives so many different things throughout the world. And I didn't know any of that back then. But what, 04, 05, 06, highly liquid environments. In 2007, we start seeing credit markets kind of falling apart. And working in credit, you kind of know there's these like 180-page credit agreements, indentures with all these downside protections. That's all credit
Covenants.
folks think about. Covenants.
Did they trip the covenants?
Concentration limits.
Man.
And back then for me, it was just an Excel model and running some Monte Carlo simulations, talking to S&P and Fitch and Moody's, but it actually started playing out. And that was a really interesting time in capital markets because you started seeing a contagion effect, like something that happened in Las Vegas when somebody was appraising a house is now 18 months bringing down, a large percentage of someone's portfolio that runs a massive hedge fund. But it takes time. And that was one of the things I learned is these things take time, right? We watch and like we read the financial publications every day, and like the market gyrates, options gyrate, bonds gyrate, but the actual long-term effects don't really kick in for a while. That was something like, it was a really cool learning process back then. While I was at JP Morgan, Bear Stearns happened. I remember Lehman happening. I was on the trading floor. After doing structured credit, I went to trade equity derivatives. So it was the options book in the financial space, like volatilities were blowing out. There were rumors about a broker-dealer going under. Really, that TARP was being structured. I think what it really was is like a kind of an education in how stuff works.
TARP, Troubled Asset Relief Program?
Yeah.
Wow. He's, by the way, he's saying a lot of crazy dope stuff, but we're going to try to...
We'll get you a library.
Yeah, we're gonna make sure you understand, but we're not going to interrupt his flow because what this man has done, right? Like being able to survive that type of environment, I felt as though it helped propel you into the businessman you are today. And you definitely you talked about it over the course of 1 minute, but like you just exited extremely, um, successful startup business in the fintech world, right? So let's talk about from the start, and then we'll get there. But like going through '08, let me know the qualities that you learned from there that you feel as though now help propel you to the businessman you are today, and that you'll keep moving forward.
Yeah, I think working at a big company,
Mm.
whether it's in consulting or law or business, you just learn a lot of best practices. And what I learned back then was that working at a big company may not necessarily be what I want to do because maybe values are different, interests are different, but you learn those like really good skill sets about how to summarize information, how to work with clients, things like that. So that was a really good kind of like uh, you know dive into learning really just business skills that you wouldn't necessarily pick up at let's say if I just got and started my own business. Like there's some stuff that you kind of fast track on, and then some things you don't. But that was a good experience for me because after 2009, I realized I do want to learn more about startups and kind of get into entrepreneurship. And my brother and I had worked on some side hustles like throughout the years, and so I still kind of had an itch to like not just have a stable job. And by the way, there were no stable jobs in finance back then.
I know now.
And they probably still
Not at
aren't.
all. Not at all. Was it? I'm curious to know. Was it a culture shock? Right, like when you start learning anything for the first time, right? Like, what were some of the things that you were introduced to? Like, you're talking about the best practices, but like also, I mean, I've interned on Wall Street. You both have worked on Wall Street. There's not as many people that look like us on our trading desks or on our floors and things like that, right? So, like, can you talk to me about the culture shock, if there was one for you, and then if so, what were some of the things you did to really ingrain yourself into the culture and be Sherwin?
It's such a good question, Brandon. So when I was a junior in college, and so I wanted to get an internship so I could finally get a full-time job. So Goldman Sachs, they're taking resumes. We're not at a target school, but they showed up, and I remember dropping my resume, and they reached out, and they're like, "We want to meet you." So I called my brother. I'm like, "Hey, have you heard of this company called Goldman Sachs?"
Wow.
Right. And he's like, "Yeah, I think they're a bank." I'm like, "Okay, like okay, good.
Okay, a bank. Yeah.
I'll go talk to them."
Move money around.
Yeah, exactly. So, I spoke to them. The conversation went well. They invited me to New York for back then. They used to do this thing where they'd give you an exploding offer as an intern. So they'd bring you into the bank. They'd be like, "Hey, we love you. Here's the offer. Accept it now, or there's no job. No negotiation, no nothing." I think that became outlawed at some point.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I visited the floor, and I remember, and I'm being very candid, I remember it was a technology floor, and it was credit technology. So I remember all the offices in the perimeter, and it just wasn't diverse. It was primarily male and primarily white. And I was thinking, okay, what does this mean? And when you looked at kind of the folks that were in the software development, like they were all brown. And I honestly, that did put me off. And I was like, I'm not sure if I want a career in technology, because if that's kind of the pathway, then maybe I need to think about something else in finance. So I actually didn't take the offer from Goldman. I got an exploding offer while I was at the bank.
One of the first people, I got to drink to that. One of the first people to turn down Goldman. Wow. That's like somebody saying, "Yeah, I'm good, Lakers. I don't want to play for y'all." Yeah. Like Goldman Sachs is the Lakers of arguably, right, of Wall Street.
Not this year Lakers.
Oh,
it's the Lakers.
Yeah, no.
Lakers.
That's crazy, bro.
Wow. A little older Lakers.
Right.
Now, admittedly, I was too naive. Like, again, I grew up in Pittsburgh. No one in my family had any background in finance. I think had I taken that offer, that would have been, to your point, that would have been a ticket to do a lot of interesting things in New York. Didn't have to be technology. I didn't know that back then.
Yeah.
So I think what I did realize is that because some of the high schools and middle schools that children go to, the guidance counselors, the teachers, I think they can have a profound impact on early trajectory,
Yes.
right? Because if I had just known a little bit, I probably wouldn't have done that. I probably would have taken the offer because it's an incredible institution. And
But it worked out well.
cultures change. Yeah, they worked out well.
Yeah.
Well, I
let's-
think
Right.
that's the thing too, and I'll let you go. But it's like, we've had so many people come on the platform and talk about how and why they decided to chase their dreams as opposed to jumping into the system, so to speak, or doing what everyone else is doing, right? Like, and obviously, I mean, I guess you don't potentially get to the platform unless it works out well, but maybe we need to start interviewing some different people. But I think there's also power in that, because as a young person, it's like there's so much pressure telling you what you should do and how you should do it and all those things, and you see the risk takers, right? You see some of the people who really believe in themselves and jump off the cliff and go for their dreams. A lot of times it ends up working out. And I'm sure there's a lot of times where it doesn't as well too, but if you're willing to roll up your sleeves and put the work in, and hopefully use some of our guests as and some of the lessons you all are sharing as a blueprint, it can show you not just, hey, I said no and look at me now, right? But it's like, hey, I said no, but look how I sacrificed to do this, this, and this, and this, and this. And that is why I was comfortable saying no,
Yeah, absolutely.
When you think of people that bet on themselves, right? You got a lot of great success stories. Then you got the Dennis Schroeder stories. Dennis Schroeder was a guy who turned down a crazy deal in the NBA, and he'll never get that deal again. He had some bad years. Sorry, Dennis, we still love you, but but you adamantly at that point, right? You say you were naive, but it ended up working better, because now I want to talk about your journey to leaving Wall Street, right? You segue from Wall Street to the hedge fund, but I really want to know your journey where you built a brand new baby, right? Your startup in the fintech world, because you overcame so much adversity, right? Had a family that couldn't teach you nothing about finance. I was the same way. In fact, I was the first black guy on my desk, and that's crazy. That's fucking 2012. But you yourself, right, were able to take everything that you went through, were able to use your credit background while surviving, the hiring and firing rounds of 2008 credit crisis, to then saying, I'm going to start a startup. What was that like?
That was great point. So 2004 to 7, I was at JP Morgan on credit desk, and it was kind of turbulent. I didn't really know. You didn't know what was happening in the world. Actually, it was actually kind of scary. And then I spent a couple more years at the bank, and finally, I was introduced to one of the founders of StubHub. And he was working. He'd already raised money, but he had started his second startup, and then part of it was his hedge fund. And so I was like, "This is great." I've met, my network has expanded because of JP Morgan. I know hedge fund managers. I know traditional asset managers. I know credit traders. This is a great way for me to kind of mix entrepreneurship, my finance background that I've now picked up, and then also work at a startup and understand just how that world works. And what was so great about it is, being in banking, being on the trading floor, I didn't know anything about venture capital. I knew about private equity to a certain extent because they were using leverage and things like that, and then publicly traded. But that was kind of my first foray into VC. And that's where I realized, and that's where I saw that VC as an asset class is incredibly powerful when you're looking to build a high growth company. You have an idea and you want to go kill it, and you've got this vision, and kind of what you alluded to earlier is you've got this drive to just go do it, but it takes time because you've got this vision, and this is for most things in life. You want to do something. You got to commit to it, and it's going to be a grind until you start seeing some sort of results. That transition for me was transformational, because it was going from working at a prestigious investment bank and having the pathway that I had. It was an amazing opportunity, to kind of leaving that network and that persona in New York to like do this startup thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Also leaving kind of a safety net, so to speak, right? Where you know you're gonna get what you get, right? You eat what you kill. Bonus season is gonna be great.
Yeah.
But then that startup world,
yeah,
you got to be completely different.
You have to be totally different.
So what was the early days of starting your company like?
Early days of starting, I mean, that was it's kind of, you have this idea, you have this vision of what it could be, and you're out there trying to convince people to work with you. You know, a lot of folks kind of jump into, it's really hard to get a check from a VC. It's really hard to get a check from VC, and like you do, 200 meetings, fill your funnel, and then you might get one. As soon as you get one yes, you're going to get more yeses. There's a whole process before that even happens, where if you have an idea, unless you're a second-time founder, most people aren't just going to write you a check, right? The due diligence, in my opinion, for a first-time founder is, as an investor, is, well, have you made progress? Great idea. What have you done? So what I realized in the early days was like, and I see this with a lot of founders, is they have to go work with a vendor and convince the vendor to work with them, or get someone, whether it's software development or regulatory or working with a family, medical office, whatever your idea is, get some traction, build the MVP, and get a customer. And then you get to raise money.
Wow, that
and
makes sense.
So the early days were like, I have this idea. How do I convince someone to work with me? Right. And I think a lot of founders face that same conundrum, right? So that was kind of it was really, it's inspirational, but it's super hard because you haven't even gotten to the point about raising money.
When you took the leap and left the safety net, as you mentioned, I'm wondering, were there people in your family, or I'm not sure, were you married at the time or not, but like, were there people who were kind of just like, whoa, Sherwin, whoa. Sherwin, chill, but like, was that reality for you at the time? And then if so, how did you curb what other people's expectations for you were versus what you actually dreamed about building?
So I went to boarding school in South India. I grew up in the United States. My parents thought they were moving back in '96. I was in ninth grade. They sent me to India to a great boarding school. Last week, I was visiting my parents in Florida, and I was opening up letters from my dad, because back then, like, I couldn't afford to call him, so we were writing letters back to one. That was like back in the day, right? Like email was like kind of a thing.
I'm glad you kept those. That's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
It was really cool. I found this letter where he says, "Sherwin, it seems like computers are going to be the next big thing. You should think about studying finance because your future might be related to computers and finance."
That's crazy.
Shout out to
fucking
Pops.
blew my mind.
It's 98.
96 or 90. It was
That's insane.
It was
bro.
early 97. He
Your
wrote
daddy a goat, by the way.
Shout
Yep.
out to Pops.
He the
he is.
Pops.
Seriously.
yeah, that's crazy.
It's absolutely crazy. And the reason I bring that up is we talked about this, so a lot of people talked about it today, was that your network and the people around you, like, we all have a couple people that are close to us, and they're kind of our like advisory board. My mom and dad have always been proponents of taking risk, and it's because they trust the decisions that I might make, but they're like, all right, if you think that's right, you should do it. Leaving, I remember I had my JP Morgan role as an intern was in Delaware, and I was adamant about wanting to be like in the action. So I told JP Morgan, I was like, I got to be in New York, and they helped me get a full-time job in New York because I wanted that. And so when I left, I was married when I left so I was at a hedge fund for about 7 years with this startup, and my wife was having her first child. And I'm like, I want to spend time with our child. I want to help raise our kid, right? So I'm gonna quit.
Wow.
In New York.
Yeah.
It's the same New York where the average rent right now is $5,000. So this is New York we're talking about.
We were in a tiny 600 square foot apartment in Midtown Manhattan. And my wife she was the one working at that time. I was like, I'll figure it out. But
trust me, I got this.
Yeah, trust me. To her credit, and we talked about this, right? Like, you get that support from whether it's your husband or your wife, whoever is like trying to do something, they have to, like, if they support you, you can get the space to do something. And I think she's been instrumental in kind of allowing me to get the space that I need while I was like working on these ideas and things like that.
Shout out to all our wives, because they not only hold the crib down, drink to the wife, but they also
much love
give us the strength to be better men, better providers, better husbands, etc. So shout out to the wives. What they do, we can never do.
No,
ever in life.
Yeah,
I got to drink on that.
I know when the kids, when the kids are feeling down, like they love both of us, but they will definitely go to her first.
I'm gonna take this clip and post it. This will get me out of the doghouse at any time. This is like my wild card. Just pull this. Oh, babe, by the way,
remember I said this.
I've been sending you praise for forever.
You send me the link because I got it.
Yeah, you got it.
I need it to.
So right now, right, Wall Street, hedge fund, early startup, and you get the itch to start your own startup. Now you are currently just had a successful exit. So now you chilling. What would you say is next, right? What do you think, or better yet, what is the next sector you believe is going to be an area that you think will have a boom cycle, that it'd be a lot of money to be made there?
Great question. So the startup that I recently exited, it's called Jeeves.
Okay.
And it's a company that provides financial products, like as we talked about earlier, to other startups. They have thousands of customers, and the reason it's been growing so quickly is, and this is like, there are actually a lot of financial services providers in the VC space, early stage companies that have been growing very, very quickly. Fintech right now is one of the hotter.
Super hot.
I should say 4 months ago, right? Today it's a little different. But the reason is that financial services in general can benefit from data. And banks, they are highly regulated entities. They move a little slower, and they don't necessarily have the luxury of kind of throwing stuff against the wall to see what sticks. But startups can do that. And what, why that space has been growing so much is, I think that venture capital as an asset class has been growing significantly over the past couple of years, and more startups are coming about. So to your point earlier, Brandon, younger folks having the ability to take a risk, I think now is better than any time in history to be a young entrepreneur, because you have access to funding. And we're seeing that in all different parts of the world. Like Latin America has been growing significantly. Europe, a lot of these companies are still coming to the United States to raise venture capital, because this is where all the VCs are. Right. All the institutional capital is sitting here. But as that continues to happen, I think there's just going to be more innovation and more startups. And what really gets me excited is, how can I help these founders grow their businesses? Like, starting a company is super tough, but then like managing your board, hiring, raising more money, optics, marketing, you're building a brand, all those things are really hard to do.
Back end.
Yeah,
app stuff.
Yeah, and it's just fun to, like, it's fun to talk to founders and like help them solve product problems and like whatever the problems they have. So I've been doing quite a bit of that right now, and spending time with family. But like, I don't know, there's something there. I think what's really exciting is just that the VC space and entrepreneurship is growing significantly, and we're giving a lot of young people a lot of opportunity to start building businesses. I'm hoping a lot of that, more of that money starts to go to the traditionally non-target audiences.
Oh yeah.
You don't have to go to Stanford. You don't have to be male. You don't have to be tall. Because
shout out to me.
Right.
Sitting here with two people taller than me. Shout out to me. Thank you.
Yeah. It's an interesting time. I don't know. It's interesting to see it evolve, especially through this credit environment.
Can you talk about, because obviously one of the things we always try to talk or touch on this platform is, people want to talk about money, right? And you talked about some of the characteristics that you gained through surviving and thriving after the '08 financial crisis, right? And then right now we're in a bit of a crisis of our own. Can you talk about what you may have learned or what similarities you see between both times? And do you get to, obviously you're in a different place financially today than you were in '08, but like what are some of the characteristics or things that you took from '08 that, you know, have you potentially optimistic about the day, or have you seen more red flags and saying, okay, I've seen this before?
Because I was 18, he was 17 in '08, and I always said to myself, man, if I lived in '08, I would have bought up all the, and I just insert, I just fill in any blank, whether it was real estate, whether it was stocks. So like, that's a great question. I'm curious to hear your view.
It's a good question, and you're right. I think you answered the question, which is that generally speaking, I think if you're, you know, a lot of folks have kind of a bedrock portfolio of an ETF, like a index fund or something like that. If that's what you're invested in, staying the course and just staying invested is it's the best thing to do. Like we've seen people figure it out. The banks get together, the governments get together, like they figure it out. Right? And then things compound over time. It takes time. But the other thing is it does take time. Like these things, you know, folks have a tendency to be worried, rightfully so, which is like, hey, what's CNBC saying? What's Bloomberg saying today? What's the Journal saying today? Should I take some action? And the thing is, this stuff takes like 2 years to play out sometimes. The COVID crash, where I think the S&P was down like well over 30%, really it was like interesting because it was like a 2-month thing, and then
Craziest rally we've ever seen. Insane.
Yeah, and then hopefully nobody got stopped out or like, you know, panicked out of it. But I did learn that, which is that I don't think what we're going through now is as bad as what happened in 2008, where we were looking at a potential systemic, like it was bad. You know, we
Except
needed
for the crypto market.
well, which is highly leveraged.
Right.
And what's exciting about that is that is definitely going to get better as a result of what's happening now, right?
You got to shake out some bad players to get some real stable money and better leaders in that world.
Seems that way, but I don't know. I'm curious what you guys think. I think that, you know, we talked about this earlier. Like interest rates are at all-time lows when you look at it across 40 some years back to the Volcker period. You know, inflation is high, but things are, you know, there's just a ton, and that's just the public marketable securities things that we're seeing. But private equity and venture capital, people are building businesses. There's a lot of interesting things going on.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've learned over time is that these are some of the best opportunities in our lifetime, right?
Absolutely.
And so that was one of the things I was trying to preach to other athletes during the pandemic is like, listen, like there are things going on that are out of our control and terrible things that we can't necessarily control or we're not proud of or happy about or are not positive things. However, the things that we can control, that's something we think about as football players, right? The things that I can control, which are the making strong investment decisions around me, this is the time to activate. This is the time to learn. This is the time to connect with people. And this is the time to figure out where I'm going to park my money for the next X amount of time frame to get the returns and build wealth and change my family's life forever. So yes, it is very scary times, you know, not everyone's in the best financial situation. However, you know, there's still opportunities out here that you have to make sure that you can see and capitalize on when you have that opportunity, have that chance.
So I got a question on this same realm, right? When we're thinking about in bear markets, you know, it's obviously some of the better times to buy, right? But we all got one thing in common, and that's we like trading options. So I got a question. Do you like trading leaps or are you a week-to-week guy?
I think with leaps, so you don't get dividends, right?
Okay.
But what I did for a while was I used to love Google, and I would buy a deep in the money leap and roll it every 18 months. They didn't pay dividends, so it was fine. But I think trading weeklies is really fun. I think it just takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
But they're really fun to trade. Have you? It sounds like you've traded both.
Well, yeah. However, as we think about like crazy undervalued, and you said something earlier, and you was like, you know, fintech has been the hottest sector, except for over the past 4 months, right? And you start thinking about certain fintech companies that are down 80, 70%. And it's like, it's now the time to get a leap, right? And obviously, disclaimer, we can never, time the market perfectly, but is that something that you're thinking about, Sherwin?
That's an interesting question. If you look at one of those stocks that's trading 80% down, you guys tell me, my bet is if you go and try and buy a leap, they're probably going to price it pretty expensive. It might, like the stock itself might start looking like an option, like a call option.
Relative to, well, shit, VIX is in the 30s right now, so
yeah,
right. Arguably, most of the options are pretty expensive. Just given, granted, where VIX is, WAL is.
Yeah, VIX and Goldman's saying VIX is probably going to cool off a bit, but I bet those those companies like Upstart and other publicly traded companies that are down 80%. If you're making a market, you're running the book on those stocks. You might price, you have to hedge your book, and like to borrow that stock and keep it long and hedge your call options. I mean, that stuff gets expensive. I haven't looked at it. I mean, if the volatility was expensive enough, I might just be inclined to go along the stock itself.
Yeah.
If I were interested in it.
That's legit. That's legit. Well, we probably got maybe one more question.
Yeah.
And it's been a fucking pleasure. Thank you for having us. Being with us. But we often we do a lot of giving back. He has an amazing football camp, and I love his football camp because he has so much diversity in the sense of he'll have athletes come because every kid that comes there, they think they're gonna go to the pros. I remember going to basketball camps, right? But not only does he have other football players come, but he have other professionals. So whether it's doctors, lawyers, financiers, the entire gamut. And one of the things he do is like, yo, 99% of y'all not gonna make it to the pros, so y'all should be really talking to these guys, right? He doesn't say it in that way, but life is all about exposure, right? And I was talking to a school in in Inglewood of Chicago, so it's pretty bad neighborhood. Great school though; they get 99% graduation rate, high school. But one of the kids, I was sitting there talking about long-term investing, and I'm giving them a blueprint, right? I'm like, yo, I can show you for sure how to make $1 million. It's just gonna take you to your 30. Right, but it's cool though, right? $250, $300 every week. Every month into the S&P 500. You look back, compounded interest, you'll be rich.
Yeah.
This one kid rose the sand. He said, "Yeah, man, that all sounds good, bro. But how do I make money now?" Right, and it stuck with me because he comes from an environment where some people don't have the luxury to even think about life 30 years from now. Right, and at the end of the day, we all could attest, like, yo, the best form of investing is long-term discipline. Yourself 30 years from now is going to be so happy you did that. But to a young kid who's just coming out, black and brown kid, what are you saying right now is the first place they should put their money?
Oof. Where should they put their money?
To make the best return.
I'm a little biased on this. I would invest in themselves. And I know this is
a fucking good answer.
I love it.
It's kind of an ambiguous, like, that pie in the sky fucking answer. But you know what? There are so many first of all, there's a lot of free resources available online about figuring out how do you just start a business, right? If you do that, okay, back when I was looking for a job, this is like many years ago, I picked up this book called, I think it's called What Color is Your Parachute? It's a classic. And there's this exercise you do to figure out, hey, what kind of job would you enjoy doing, right? We've all heard it. If you love your job, it may not feel like a job. So you basically answer these questions. It's like, what do my friends come to me for advice for? What are my hobbies? And there might have been one other question. And you basically like find out what the intersection is, and that's the stuff you love.
Right.
If I'm young and I want to invest in myself, I might go find some resources online about entrepreneurship, figure out what you like doing, and maybe give it a shot. Like, use some money to go buy something and resell it, or make something, right? Make a product, find an audience, like, just give it a shot. because if you fail, you'll figure out what business is like. If you succeed, you might just find your career. You know, you might find your calling.
I like that.
Wow. And it's worth it. And you're investing in yourself.
That was awesome.
Yeah. Say no more. Investing in yourself. I think, hey, listen, I think that's one of the most underappreciated investments of all time. Right? And I'm so glad that you highlighted that. But Sherwin, thank you for taking the time to be here. Man.
Thanks for having me. This was so much fun, guys. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Culture. Boom. Another one. Money Music Culture. We'll see y'all next time. Peace.